Hey everyone, welcome to this brand new course on product documentation using static site generators. I'm Moko Chavez Amadabuchi, a senior technical writer with experience building documentation using tools like Hugo, Jenkins, MKDocs, Dockerceros, Mentlify, Gatebook, Breedme, and a lot more. So in this course, we are going to explore how to create clear, user-friendly product docs using modern static site generators. Perfect for developers, for writers, and anyone building tech content. So whether you're just starting out or looking to sharpen your skills, this series will guide you step by step from choosing your perfect SSG to publishing a polished documentation site. So in this course, we have an outline and we're going to cover the introductory part of the course, which we have done. We're going to talk about the audit. We're going to talk about prominent docs features. We're going to talk about planning the documentation, talk about the SEO part of the docs, talk about effective use of UI components. We'll talk about implementing style guide in the docs. We'll also talk about information architecture, how to structure the docs. We'll also talk about the static site generators, different types of them, and which one we're going to use, and also talk about implementing a style guide on the docs. So, what is a developer documentation? So, developer documentation refers to the guides, the reference, or technical manuals that help users, often developers, understand and use the software. So, it provides the fundamental details needed to implement, use, and manage the software application. So high quality documentation is crucial for effective software development. It improves communication, it helps users navigate the software, and serves as a reference for developers. In fact, good documentation enhances usability, accelerates development, simplifies maintenance, and speeds up onboarding of new team members. So now we have two examples of documentation that we're talking about. So we have one documentation by Mentlify, and we have two, which is an unofficial TMDB API documentation built by one of our students in our last program. Of a developer documentation created by the Mentlify team, and we have this other example, which is an unofficial TMDB API documentation created by one of our best students in the last API documentation cohort. Now, let's start with the Mentlify documentation. So the Mentlify documentation, as you can see, it's very easy to navigate. It has a very good sidebar that, that is also well placed and also has a very good structure and flow. It's easier for you to navigate and go through the docs. They have a search section which makes it easier for you to search and understand the documentation. Probably if you have anything you want to search about in the docs, you go here and you search. Let's say you want to search about installation. So you have the installation part. So you click on this, it takes you to the page. Now this is migration and you're having installation here. So migration is something that might not be easy for someone to know you have installation under migration. So that's why you need to have a search. It makes it very easy for you to follow. So coming to this documentation, you don't know much about Mentlify, you want to learn much about Mentlify, you have the first section of getting started. When you click on the getting started, it takes to this page of start that explains a bit more on how to work with the Mentlify. So that is what documentation is all about. Letting you understand how to use that tool, that project, that product. So on Mentlify right now, coming to Mentlify, you look at the documentation, it's easier for you to follow. Click on the quick start, and it's a journey. So you have the quick starts. Now they feel you've known the how to install and work and have it up set up. The next is now editing. So it keeps going up like that. So let's look over to the next example we have here, which I would say again is the unofficial TMDB API documentation. So you're coming to the documentation for the very first time. You're being introduced to this by the introduction page, telling you much about what TMDB is, giving you use cases as someone that is new to the TMDB documentation. So the next is for you to have your API keys because you need to run and test it locally. So you need to know how to get your API keys. So which is now what is explained here. So you have the authentication, you have the endpoints overview, you have the error codes, then you start having an organized endpoint here. So you have everything under authentication, has to do with authentication. Everything under account has to do with account. Everything under certifications has to do with certifications. And when you click it, you're able to see the title, able to see the description, and also you can also test and try it out. So that's the main essence of documentation, helping you understand how to use that tool in a way for you to implement that into your product or into your project. Let's talk about auditing documentation. Auditing documentation involves reviewing and improving content to enhance its clarity, accuracy, and usability. This ensures that the documentation is well structured, error free, and easy to follow. So, when tasked with modifying existing documentation, it's essential to identify what needs improvement, why is it important, and how to fix it. So a good audit report ensures that documentation is not only correct but also user-friendly and consistent. It's very important for us to audit a documentation that needs revamping or needs modification. If you're being given a task to modify a documentation, the first thing you need to do is to run an audit on that particular documentation to ensure that the documentation meets its needs. The documentation is on point. The documentation is accurate. The documentation is clear enough. So those are the certain things you're going to check for. So now let's talk about how to audit. So we have 5 steps. So the first is initial review. The second step is content evaluation. The third is visuals and media. The fourth is testing. And the fifth is structures and flow. So now let's start with initial review. So run the documentation locally. That's what you have to do in the initial review. Run the documentation locally. So if the documentation is technical, set it up in your local system, review it as an end user. So, or you go page by page, ensure all information is correct, up to date, and logically organized. So the next one is content evaluation. So we are going to check for accuracy, verify that all details, technical terms, and the code examples are correct. Clarity and readability. So you have to ensure that the language is simple, direct, and easy to follow. So you're going to check for grammar and spelling. So fix any typographical error, any grammatical or formatting error. That is what you're going to do in the content evaluation. So in the visuals and media, so which is the UI components. So first, you're going to check for images. So ensure that the images are clear, the images are well annotated, and also not blurry and correctly placed. The next you're going to check is code examples. So test all code snippets to confirm they are correctly formatted and functional. So for the UI component usage, which is the tabs, you have the tables, you have the accordion, you have the asides, or you call them callouts, or the code snippets. So verify that all UI elements are used appropriately. So they are used where they should be used. For example, you have a step-by-step guide should not be placed inside the table. It won't be clear. So a table are meant for structured data and not instructional content. So the next is testing. So first you need to test your code. You have the interactive elements. You also need to test to ensure that everything is working. You have external link. You try to click the link to ensure that the link is working, is taking you to where it should. So identify the broken links, incorrect commands. When you test, try those commands. You're testing everything you have on the docs to ensure that everything is working. That is part of auditing. So the next and the last we have is the structure and the flow. So you have to check, ensure the documentation follows a natural progression, from basic to advanced topics. When you're following a documentation, it's probably most of them would want to start with, maybe overview or introduction, and next you have installation, depending on the product or tool, but it has a logical flow. So you ensure that it follows that logical flow, starting from the beginner part. So it should start from beginner part, making it easier and get to the last part where it's going to be advanced. You don't start with the advanced point. Imagine you want to learn JavaScript and the number one point you have is data structure and algorithm. You won't even learn it. So that's the reason why most of the programming languages you learn, you see that at the beginning part of it, they always have introduction, maybe have overview, Then you have installation, how to install the program or how to set up the ID or the code editor to use. Then you have hello world. People always ask, why do we have hello world first, not something else? Hello world is just to let you know that, hey, this is easy. You can say I use one line of code to run this. It's easy. So you can easily do that yourself. So when you run the hello world, you see that I use one line of code and it worked. So which means it's easy. They've now captured your attention. You just got in and you start following that. The next thing is you probably learn is a comment, the variables, you go over to the data types, and it keeps going down, and the more it getting advanced. So they don't start with something advanced, they always start with something basic and move down. So these are the kind of ideas you need to have in your head when you are auditing, so that you ensure that in your audit reports it's very rich, and when they implement the solutions in your audit report, the docs will be a standard docs. So you also checking for the navigation to ensure that the navigation are well placed, the names are not too long, the names are correct and accurate, and the navigation is actually navigating the user. And if I documentation as an example for this audit report. So let's say you're given a task to audit this documentation. So I stated in the previous video, I stated 5 steps or 5 ways. One is initial review. You have the content evaluation, you have the visuals and media or UI component, you have the testing, and lastly you have the structure and you have the flow. So there is no order of doing it. You can do it anyhow, but ensure you use these 5 steps. So one of them is the testing. So once you get to this page, you have to ensure you test all these links to make sure they're working. So you click this link is working. You click this link, the link is working. So if for any reason any of them are not working, then you have to note it down in an audit report. So I will show you a sample audit report. An audit report doesn't really have like a standard. The most important thing is that your audit report must have current problem, the page, and your fix or your solution. So it's not necessary to have it in a table. There are some pages that are too big. You can't just stuff those problems and the solutions in the table. We probably need to take it out of the table. But if the reports or the problems or the issues in the page is not so much, then you can just use the table. So it's more organized and not taking so much space in the report. So we have the testing, the test, we have the content evaluation. So you are going through this content, reading the content to check that the content is accurate, the content is clear enough, is readable, and the grammar and the spelling, going through to check them to ensure they don't have any spelling errors, no grammatical problems. So you also check for the visuals. Is this image clear enough? Is it good enough? I try to zoom it, it's clear, it's good. But if it is not good, you have to note it down that, okay, this image is not good. If it has a label, you also need to check, is the label well placed? Will it cause confusion? That falls under the visual and media. So for the structure, you're looking at this structure, you're asking yourself, is this structure good enough? You have the quick start and you have the editing, which has its own drop down with the local development and more. So you also still need to test more. This command, you copy this command, you go over to your local system, you run the command. If it doesn't work, then you note it down that I tried to run the command in this page and it didn't work. The solution, ensure the commands are working, which you now later work with engineers to rectify this issue. So these are the steps you use to audit your documentation. So now you have a sample audit here. So this is developer documentation audit reports. So you have the project name, the team, you have audit conducted by who, yourself or any other person, or conducted by the entire team. You have the scope of the project, you have the audit period. Then you have the objectives, which you need to list out the objective of the audit. Then you have this table. You need to give it a title. So here I gave it issues and gap identified. You can give it any title that fits into the context. And like I said, when the pages are so much, it's not needed to be in a table. But when the audit is not that big, then you just need to have it in the table. So here you have the category, you have the issue. Issue is where you talk about the problem. You have the page wherever necessary, so they would know what page has that issue, so they can go and check and confirm that the problem you stated is there. You have the suggested solution. You can call it solution. You can call it suggested solution. You can call it fix. Then you have the impact. Then you have the priority. So the priority would now be what you or any other technical writer will use in working on that doc. So which one has a high priority? We need to start working on those ones compared to those that have a low priority. So this is a sample audit report. You can learn from this and use this to, create your own audit report. Like I said, if the pages are too big, it's not recommended to have it in the table because the table will also now cause more problem, which is not also a good report. So when the pages are so much, the issues are so much, you don't need to stuff it in the table. But when it's not that much, a table is best fit for something small. So it's not too big, it's organized at least within a few lines than when you want to start writing it down, which will probably go more than one page. So we're going to talk about prominent docs features. So those documentation features that is a must for you to have in your documentation. Those docs features that will make your docs stand out, that will help the users, be able to navigate your docs easily, read your docs easily, and also, give you features where you can, make a lot of changes and make your docs, have a particular brand style and a brand color. So we're going to talk about those docs features. So number one is search functionality. Search functionality. Search is a very important, aspect in documentation because it will help your users, search your documentation, look for or find any information they couldn't find when they navigate. So it's easier for them to just search. Also searching in between the content to be able to search and to bring out those information for them. So if your docs don't have a search feature, then it's not a standard documentation. The next is day 19. So day 19, a lot of people might look at it as not a very good feature, but for me, it is a good feature because we have a lot of people that are visually impaired, those that don't have have a bad eyesight. So it's important for them to be able to read and enjoy your docs at night. So which means if it gets to night time, then they won't be able to use your docs. And if developers enjoy doing their coding, doing their researches at night. So it's important for you to have that day 19 so it's easier for them to switch to the theme they would like to use. So if they want to use a light theme, which is always bright, not good for the eyes. If they want to use a night theme, which is favorable to the eyes during the day and also at night. So this is a very important feature that you must have in your docs. The next is breadcrumbs. So it's very, very important because this will help you know, it's like a journey, know where you're coming from and also know how to go back. Because there are examples where you're browsing or navigating a documentation, and for some reasons, maybe you close your laptop and you want to open your laptop and go back where you're coming from. You have seen the page you are on right now, but you don't know where you came from. So it's not good. I'm going to show an example so you will see all these features. Now, the next is in-page navigation. It's very important, most especially when you scroll down your docs and you want to probably easily go up or easily see the other topics you checked on the docs. So it's easier for you to just use the in-page navigation and navigate within that page. Makes it seamless for you. So the UI components, which are very, very important, you have like the tables, you have the tab, you have the code, the quotes, and a whole lot of them. Accordion, you have the aside. So these are cool features that your docs need to have so that the technical writers or whoever is handling your documentation is able to use these components to build your docs to a standard level. So we have customization. So most, or I would say some docs don't have that room for you to customize. So it's always good to have a docs that will give you room to customize. So you customize the docs in a way it has your style, has your look and feel, which is your brand, and you're able to change and also remove things. There are some maybe buttons are not available in some SSGs. You have cards and also available in some SSGs and also steppers. So when there is customization feature for that documentation, you would see that they will be able to create a documentation style that will be cool for them, creating a stepper that might look different from the ones you see on Mentlify, the ones you see on Gatebook, and other prominent SSGs and all that. So let's take a look at these features. Documentation of Mentlify, and I will use this as an example to show you the importance of those prominent docs features. So number one we have on the list is search. So it's important for us to know what search is in documentation. So this docs is a very big docs, and it's impossible for you to get everything at a glance. So I'm looking for components. Coming to this doc for the very first time, I might not know where component is. So to make it easier for me to get this component, I need to find it very fast. So this is where the search comes in. So now I want to search for components. Now I have components. So I click, and we have a lot of components here. So I click on the component, and this has taken me what to do now. All right, so they are taking me to components on that tabs on the components. So I'm looking for components, and this is how I could get the components. So if I want to search for components, I go over back to Mentlify, go to the documentation. So first I will need to start opening the pages, opening these drop downs one after the other. So I'm not likely to see it here. Maybe I want to click here, then I see the components here. So now you're searching for tabs or you're searching for callouts. So if I'm searching for callouts, I easily type the callout here. It takes me straight to the callout. So search is very, very important. It increases findability. So when you don't have search in your documentation and users are not able to search things very fast, it's impossible. So it's very important for you to have search feature in your documentation. Now, the next we have is in-page navigation. Now, this is what we call in-page navigation. And you can implement this in your documentation using your header tool. So when you use your header tool, it comes out in your in-page navigation. So let's say I probably get down to this place, to the check callout, and I want to go check some information about the note callout. So instead of me scrolling up, I will just stay here, and this in-page navigation would help me navigate in this page. So I click on this, it takes me here. Oh, maybe I need to go back to check. I need to check something. I click this, it takes me to check. So it's important for us to have this feature on our documentation. So when you want to choose or select any documentation tool or SSG, ensure it has these features. Then the next is day 19. Day 19 is important for those that are visually impaired, those that, and also even if you don't have any eye issue, this, it takes you to this is the day and this is the night. So it's important for us to have this feature. Then so we have one other feature called the breadcrumbs, which is very, very important. So breadcrumbs gives you a journey of where you're coming from and where you are in your documentation. So currently I'm at the CLI setup. So I click on the CLI reference and I click on the flag. So this has given me the journey that I'm at the flag under CLI, coming from under CLI reference, coming from the CLI. If you find yourself in a situation where you open the page and you, for some reason, you closed your system or something and you're back again, now you really want to know where you're coming from. So it's very impossible for you to, know where you're coming from when you don't have the breadcrumbs. So the breadcrumbs is a very important feature that would give you that journey that this is where you're coming from and this is where you are. So sometimes you really want to go to the page before your current page, and you don't know. Clicking the back button will probably take you away from the docs or from the website or from the app. So breadcrumbs is a very important feature to have on your documentation. So if I click this, it takes me to the reference, and I click this, it takes me to the CLI. So these are quite important features you need to have. Then the last we have on our list is customization. It's very good to have a docs that you're able to customize, change the look and feel. So it has your brand style, your brand color. It speaks and oozes your brand. So some other SSGs don't give you that customization feature. Also, you have some that do give you that. Mintlify is one of them that gives you that customization feature. So looking at this, you see the brand all over the documentation, green, white, and black. So now you have one example here. Also used Mintlify for this one of our best students in the API documentation cohort. She used Mintlify to design this documentation. Now you're seeing the brand color and style is different from the one we have over here. Now you see this is the landing page of this documentation. And now here you're seeing the landing page of the one she created. So it gives you that flexibility to create your documentation and give it a look and feel. So you have other SSGs that also do that. Hugo does that. Dockersaurus does that. And Mentlify also gives you that flexibility to do that. So if you go over to our API reference section, you see the brand style, the brand color is very different. She added anything she wants to add. She's able to customize it and make it look different. Now, if you look at the style Mentlify has here, their navigation style is quite different from what she has here. Let's talk about effective use of UI components. So UI components play a crucial role in enhancing the readability, the usability, and the visual appeal of a documentation. When used correctly, they help structure content effectively, making it easier for readers to absorb information. So, however, overusing or misplacing them might lead to confusion and a clustered documentation. So let's talk about why UI components are important. So UI components improves your readability, the user experience, and the visual appealing of the content. So well-structured content is easier to navigate. A properly placed UI element guides readers effectively. A clean and organized design makes documentation more engaging. Now let's look at the common UI components and when to use them. So we have a lot of them, but we're going to cover just a few. So we have the table, we have the asides. Aside has several names depending on the SSG you're using. Some of them call them asides, some call admonition, and others call it callouts. So we have the code blocks and we have the tabs. So for the tables, so tables are best for presenting structured data, comparison, or specification. So avoid using tables for non-tabular content, such as step-by-step guides. It's not good. So asides, admonition, or callouts are used for additional information, notes, side comments that are helpful but essential. When you want to warn somebody, you want to talk about the danger, you want to talk about tips, you want to talk about notes, you use asides for that. So avoid excessive use of it as so many asides can be distracting. So we have the code block ideal for displaying code snippets or terminal commands. So ensure proper syntax highlighting and formatting for readability. So I need to add, if it's a JavaScript code, you add JavaScript code. If it's for Python, you add Python. If it's for command, you add shell. So for steppers is okay, tabs. So tabs is useful when displaying multiple related options, such as different programming languages, Python, Java, JavaScript, Dart, Kotlin, and so on and so forth. So do not use tab excessively as they can hide important content. So let's talk about encodings and steppers. So encodings used when presenting large chunk of information that users may want to expand or collapse, like your frequently asked questions or detailed explanation. So you don't want it to be all over the page, so you use encoding to just hide it. So if a reader wants to see a particular information, you just click the drop down and they only see what they want to see. So avoid using them for critical information. That will also try to hide a lot of information from the user. Steppers perfect for step-by-step instruction, such as installation guide or processes. So do not place step-by-step instruction inside the table. Steppers is best for it, or you can use your headers H2 and H3 for the step-by-step. But steppers is mainly for step-by-step. And we have a whole lot of them which are not default in most documentation. So the one UI component I mentioned that a few of them are default except steppers. So steppers, you can find steppers in Mentalify, you can find steppers in Gitbook, you can find steppers in Astrolight docs, Starlight docs. Yeah, but I think every other place I've not seen other SSGs that have steppers. So you have to manually create these steppers for yourself. So let's talk about planning the documentation. Effective documentation starts with a solid plan. So when you want to start working on a new documentation, how you plan is very, very important. So in this chapter, we're going to talk about two sections. We're going to talk about the audience analysis and we're going to talk about the content planning. So audience analysis is understanding who the documentation is for. So before writing your documentation, it's essential to identify the target audience. Different users have varying levels of expertise, expectation, and documentation needs. So understanding your audience helps tailor the content to provide maximum value. So the first thing we're going to talk about is who we use this documentation. So is it the developers who need API reference, integration guide, and some examples and code snippets? Is it the end users who require like a user manual, tutorials, and then troubleshooting help? Or is it the administrators who seek installation and configuration guides and security best practices? So the next thing you're going to ask yourself is, what are their goals? Are they trying to set up, configure, troubleshoot, or extend the system? Do they need in-depth technical knowledge or a simple step-by-step guide instruction? So the next thing we're going to ask ourselves while we are trying to plan is, what are their pain points? Do they struggle with installation, configuration, debugging, or the best practices? So what common errors or confusing aspects should the documentation clarify? So now let's ask ourselves the last question to help us understand our audience. What is their technical expertise level? Beginner, they need more explanation, more example, and a step-by-step guidance. Intermediate, they require a concise information with code, samples, and configuration details. Or advanced, expert, that prefer detailed reference, API docs, and troubleshooting steps. So if you're able to ask yourself all these questions and you're also able to answer all these questions, then you have now known your audience. It's very, very important. So for example, if you're writing a documentation for a cloud API, so the audience might include the developer integrating the API into the application, the IT admins configuring authentication and security settings, and the product manager seeking an overview of the API capabilities. So audience analysis is very, very important. So now let's talk about content mapping. You've known your audience. Now, how can you map the questions you ask yourself, the answers you've got? So how can you map them together to have a very good user journey in your documentation that would now tailor what you want? So you've known your audience, they are all defined. The next step is to organize the documentation into a meaningful category. This ensures that users can easily navigate and find information they need. So now let's list key topic. Let's start by identifying essential content areas based on the user journey, the product functionality, and the common user issue. So user journey in some cases is going to be the onboarding, setup, usage, advanced features, and troubleshooting. So the product functionality, the APIs, the UI guides, CLI, command, and system configuration. Then the common user issues, error handling, FAQs, and debugging. Now, Categorizing content by purpose, we need to understand and how to use the diathesis framework. So this is a useful guide for structuring your content. So it covers the guide, it covers the reference, it covers the concept, and also covers the troubleshooting. So the guide talks about the purpose of the guide is the step-by-step instruction to achieve a specific goal. For the reference is the detailed technical spec or your API docs or configuration file. Then the concept or conceptual pages will talk about the explanation of how things work, the principles and the best practices. Then your troubleshooting is problem solving. So now let's look at an example map for a REST API documentation. So you see the journey, it has introduction, it has the getting started, it has the API reference, it has the concept, and it has the troubleshooting. So the under the introduction, you have the overview of the API, the use cases, authentication. Then the getting started now shows you the installation, setup, the first API call, and a sample use case. The API reference shows you the endpoint documentation, the request, the response format, and the error codes. Then the conceptual page or concept page shows you the REST principles, the rate limiting, security best practices. Then the troubleshooting shows you the common errors and fixes, debugging API requests, and FAQs. So if you're able to analyze your audience, you now know your audience, you've asked yourself those questions and you're able to answer them. Now you're not able to map those answers into a nice category, you're able to come with a very good sample like this. Let's talk about SEO. So SEO is a very crucial topic when it comes to documentation because nobody wants to build a documentation that will be read by the employees alone. So we're building documentation for our users, our end users, to be able to see them and read them. So it's not that we always direct them where to go to and see it. So search engines need to kind of crawl the content and put it up and make it easier for our users to see. So creating high quality documentation is not just about writing clear and structured content. It's also about ensuring users can easily find the content. Now, this is where SEO plays a crucial role. By optimizing documentation for search engine, you increase its visibility, making it easier for users to discover the information they need. So one essential way to do this is through front matter. So we're going to learn about front matter, what they are and what to do with them. So which helps structure metadata for documentation. So let's talk about why SEO is important in documentation. So SEO is the process of improving visibility of a content in search engines like Google, Bing, or internal search engines in the documentation platforms. So number one is it helps or makes it easier for users to find relevant content. It improves search ranking so that the most useful page appears first. It enhances the user experience by providing a well-structured content. So by providing means you building documentation will be forced to follow the rules of SEO to be able to create a well-structured SEO-powered documentation. So ensuring metadata, we have the metadata in SSGs, we have the title, the descriptions, and the keywords, and they have other fields too. So to ensure that these are correctly formatted for search engine. So when you have SEO in mind, you would ensure that you correctly format your metadata. So for example, if a user searches for how to install Node.js on Linux, so SEO friendly documentation ensures that the most relevant page appears at the top of the search results. So without proper SEOs, users struggle to find the documentation they need. It will even make it look like it doesn't exist. So SEO is very, very important. So it's a very important aspect of documentation. So now we talked about front matter. So what is front matter? So many SSGs or static site generators like Ducasaurus, Hugo, Jenkins, MKDocs, you have Gitbook, you have Mintlify.
So they use front matter to define metadata for the documentation pages. So front matter is a block of structured data placed at the top of a markdown file enclosed by triple dashes. So now one of the features of the front matter, it has the title, it has the description, has the keywords, and some others have the sludge or URL. So the title is the page title. This displays in your search results. So the description is a brief summary of the page content so that the crawler will be able to know that this is the title and this is what the page is all about. So the search terms that can help find the pages. So how front matter helps with SEO? So one, it helps with title optimization, the metadata description for search engine for search results, using keyword effectively.
Let's talk about implementing a style guide. We need to know what is a style guide, and why we need to have a style guide, and why we need to implement a style guide in our documentation. A style guide is a set of rules that standardize how content is written and formatted in the documentation. So it ensures consistency, readability, and professionalism across all the pages or your document. It is very, very important because without a style guide, we won't have consistency. For example, when you write and you start with a capital letter, you start your sentence with a capital letter. There is a reason why you started your sentence that way. So we didn't wake up in the morning to decide to always start it like that. So there are a set of rules that was set in place. So, and these rules are meant to be followed. And when you don't follow them, you will have inconsistent content. In this content, you started with a capital letter, and in this other content, you're not starting with a capital letter. So that would confuse your users, and your users will get annoyed, and you lose readers, or you lose users, whatever name you want to call it. So now let's talk about the different types of style guides. So we have the academic writing, we have the copywriting, and we have the software documentation. So for the academic writing, it's more of a formal guidance, and they work with style guides like APA style guide, MLA style guide, and Chicago writing style guide. So for copywriting, it focuses more on persuasive and marketing content. So they also use either MLA, APA, or they use a Google Writing Style Guide. And for the marketing that is tailored more to software engineering, would have to use a Google Writing, Microsoft, or hard writing style guide. So for software development, so it requires a structural and technical accuracy. So you need a Google Writing Style Guide tailored for this. You need a Microsoft Writing Style Guide and the Red Hat Writing Style Guide. So these are the popular software documentation writing style guide available. They have other ones, but these are the three most popular ones. So yeah, so the developer documentation, Google developer documentation, Microsoft, and you have the Red Hat. So now using tools to enforce writing style guide, because just telling people about the writing style guide, we have a content for writing style guide, and we would like you to use this content to implement it in the docs. That wouldn't enforce it. Users or the writer might forget, and that's it. So the way to make it work, the way to implement it is when you use few tools, we call them pro linting tools that enforces that in your code base. So we have one popular one, which is an open source project called Veil. So Veil is a very awesome tool that is used to enforce the writing style guide and documentation. So when you have Veil installed, if you want to write and send your content on GitHub, because Veil works with GitHub very well. So when you're done and you want to push it's going to flag if you have any grammatical or spelling error. It will flag it out and you get it fixed. So that is one way to enforce. But just having the content somewhere, it doesn't enforce it, and people would really want to use that. So that's why it's very important and also recommended to have writers to have access to Veil. Let's talk about information architecture, which is how you structure your content so that users can find the content. So now information architecture answers some questions like what section should the documentation have? How should topics be grouped together? And lastly, what is the best way to navigate between pages? So information architecture would help you organize your documentation system, whereby it helps your users access the right information at the right time without feeling lost. So if you're building a documentation, planning documentation, and you don't have IA in plan, which means that your documentation wouldn't be of high standard, your documentation will be difficult to navigate, and your documentation will not help users find content when they want it. So now let's talk about the key principles of information architecture, which is one, the logical flow. So content should, move from basic to advanced concepts. So what I mean is you have a documentation. Let's use React for example, or let's use JavaScript for example. You want to learn JavaScript for the very first time as a new user. You go to the documentation, and the first thing you're seeing is arrays, or you're seeing data structure and algorithm. You get confused. So the logical flow is very, very important, where you start from introduction, telling your users what JavaScript means. The next thing that follows would be installation or setup, to talk about how to install it or how to set it up. Are you installing in a mobile device? Are you installing it on your system? How to get it set up. Then the next you have hello world. Okay, you now know what JavaScript means. You know how to set it up locally on your system to test to see how it works. Now the next thing is hello world. So why hello world? So hello world is just to tell you, hey, JavaScript is not difficult. Just run one line of code and you get to see hello world. It's easy. So they follow that logical flow. The next you have a comment, the next you have the variable, then it keeps going till it gets to the advanced part. You start talking about data structure and algorithm and more and the likes. So if you don't follow that logical flow, then it's going to be difficult for users to flow on documentation and understand the documentation. So now easy navigation is the next point. So users should be able to find what they need in a few clicks. So that's why you need to ensure your documentation has a few features. It has a search, very, very important. And also when going through the content, you need to use some UI component to make it easier for them. So the last point we have is clear headings and subheadings. Very, very important. So when you don't have a well-structured title, it doesn't improve readability. Sometimes you'll probably look at the content and you don't know where you are. So you're wondering, have I got to the next point? Or maybe the step-by-step guide. Am I in step two or am I still in step one? It seems I'm in step two. You've started asking yourself questions that is a huge confusion for your readers. So now when readers or users start asking themselves those questions, they know that your content is not successful. You didn't implement IA in that content. So when you use the clear heading, it's easier for them to follow, which makes readability very, very fine. You have a content, you use heading one, you come to the next one, you use heading one, within heading one, you have heading three, under heading three, you have it heading one, the user will be so confused. So using clear heading and subheadings and also these formatting structures is very, very important. This will help your users really understand what the content is all about, read and enjoy the content. So they are able to read the content, when you implement all this. But without this, they will get stuck at one point and they will leave. So it's very, very important for us to understand these key principles and implement them in our documentation. So now we have an example of a good information architecture in a software documentation. So this is a well-structured developer guide, and this is how most will probably follow. Depending on your product, depending on the tool, it differs. But this is like a simple logical flow. So you have the introduction, gives you the overview of the software, overview of the project, overview of the tool. You have getting started. What are we going to do there? So we talk about installation, setup, and a few other information they need to know on how to get started. Underneath, you also have quick start, which if it's a programming language, you have the hello word, probably telling them how to just do something quickly and see results. So you can have quick start. Then they have basic usage, step-by-step tutorials on some areas. You have advanced features, advanced explanation, and more. You can see the logical flow. It flows from the introduction, this a bit harder, and it gets to the advanced part. So that is how a documentation structure outline should be. So don't start with very difficult part. Try to start with the part that is easier for users to follow and give them that logical flow, that journey, so that they'll be moving down as they're going down. It's getting more difficult. That's the structure. So that is why we need to implement IA in our documentation. Let's talk about SSGs, which are static generators. So in modern technical writing, unlike before, modern technical writing, so SSGs have become a popular choice for creating and managing developer documentation. They allow documentation to be written in Markdown, stored in a version control like GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket, and automatically, build it into a fast and searchable website, and very, very easy for you to navigate. So SSGs follow the Docker code approach, treating documentation just like you treat code. You write your code on any text editor, you push it on GitHub. The next person goes there to check the content, to send a PRU, they merge it or they reject it. That same process, that same procedure, that is what this SSG does for documentation, makes documentation follow that same process. We use same tools that developer use, some tools actually, like the text editors. You can use VS Code or you can use any text editor of your choice. Write your document in Markdown, MD format, send it, push it, send a commit to GitHub. The next person goes there, or your reviewer or your product manager or your line manager goes to review the content, drop a few comments on GitHub, which you go and work on the comments. Afterwards, they merge, and that's it. Same way you do your code, that's the same way you do your documentation. So that is made possible by SSGs. So how it works is you write your documentation using Markdown, and SSGs have two popular markup languages, which is one is Markdown and you have the other one ASCII-Doc. So there are popular static site generators that a lot of organizations use. There are a whole lot of them. They have way more than 100. So we have the popular ones. So you have Hugo, you have Dockersaurus, you have Jenkins, you have MKDocs, you have Midlify, you have Gitbook, and you have README, and a whole lot of them. So there are so much. So we are going to use one example. Okay, first of all, I would share a website that has a list of static site generators, which you can go through and see for yourself. That website. So they have a list of static site generators. So if you can see here, so they have a list of 360 generators, or the languages that have filter for you to check for the languages of your choice. So the ones check for the templates and also check for the licenses also. So here, in no particular order, they arranged it. No. So you have next.js. So when you want to select the static site generator, you also check with the strength of the developers and also the strength of the technical writer. If it's somebody that is technical, so you check for the languages, you check for some other features like the markup language they use the programming language they use in customizing it, if it supports a few other markup language like HTML and If it supports CSS for the customization, you also check if it has a large community or more. So when you come to the Jamstack website, you get to be able to see that. So you have Next.js, you have Hugo, you have Docusaurus, you have Nox, you have Gatsby, you have Astro, you have Jenkins, you have Hexo, you have Slate, Remix, Doxify, Gitbook. And if you go on and on, you will see a whole lot of them. So you come to this website, you have these options, and you check. And anyone that fits your need, fits the project, you go for it. So for example, we click on Docusaurus. Here you see it's powered by Markdown, built using React. So which means if you're a JavaScript person, you're a front-end person, you know React, then this is for you, easier for you to customize it. They're ready for translation, document versioning, document search. So they also have the website for you to go and check. So we click on the Docusaurus website and we're here. So let's click on getting started. So now, before building the documentation, first you have to come to the official documentation website to check for other features before you go ahead to pick that documentation SSG. So we get to, let's go to guides, and what I'm looking for right now is the UI component I talked about. So let's look for the UI components. All right, so you can see that the Gusaros has tabs. So you can see it has tabs. So look at the Markdown features, code logs, the admonition. These have the admonition. Look at them, very colorful and fine. Heading, table of content. Sometimes you want to link to assets, so it makes it easier for you to link to assets. Also have the Markdown link, so you can link outside of the documentation. So Markdown, MDX plugin, so you can also use MDX if you don't want to use .md. You can also use .mdx. So math equation, you can also have that in your documentation. So if your project requires a math equation to be shown, you have to use this. So it covers a lot. So diagram. So you see, you can also draw diagrams using Cosaro. So that makes it very cool. So head customize the metadata. So it covered a whole lot of UI components. I might not cover everything in it. So the next point for you to ask is it customizable? Is it an SSG that I can customize and add other UI components of my choice? And that's yes. So you can also customize this and add any UI component that you don't have. So it has a search and using plugins. So you can also use plugins. You can also create plugins for the community. So they have a huge community, and the plugins you have the blog, you have for the pages, you have for the blog, you have for Google Analytics, Google Tag, and Google Tag Manager, Sitemap, and SVGRO. So let's check the advanced. So let's see. Okay, we're done here. Yeah, so pretty much this is what you have to go through the documentation and check if it fits your need. So let's check different one. Let's go to Hugo. So Hugo uses language Go. So if you know your Go language person, then this is documentation you can easily customize. So it's written in Go, optimized for speed, easy use, configurability. Hugo takes a directory of content, mixes of Markdown files with front matter for metadata. So let's go check it out. It starts. So very easy for you to create, very easy for you to add the content. You can add the content in the command line, also add the content by manually doing that in your text editor structure. So you can configure the sites and more. So let us look for something else. I think we are here for something else. Let's check. Let's check for the UI components. Okay, my context menu. Let's see. So you can see why structuring the documentation is better right now. I'm taking so much time just trying to look for a UI component. Oh, so this is UI components, shortcodes, detail. So this has to add a detail. Okay, so this part of the UI component. So they use shortcodes, which means you will be confused. You don't know that you're looking at the UI components, but you are looking at the UI component. And I might be wrong that this is not the UI components. So I think from the shortcodes, we just have a few. Now, let's check the themes. Because one thing about SSG is the default theme, doesn't have so much, but the community have built a lot of themes and added much because they have that feature for you to customize. So Hugo is one that have feature for you to customize. So you have a list of the themes here, and I think I'll go with docs. This looks quite cool. So also very easy for you to install. So visit official docs. All right, so let's go check it out. So one thing you notice from Docker Struts is it doesn't have themes, just have like a default theme. On the official website, you don't have a section for you to see different themes. So this looks cool. And now this is a theme created by the community. How to this looks good. So visit, not see the official docs. So I don't think it's here. All right, so I think let's search for it. So what I'm doing right now is not what every user would do at all. So that's one problem when it comes to documentation. You don't add the right information, you stress your users and they leave. So right now I'm doing this because of this course, but if not for the course, I would definitely use a different one. So we go to this. Now this is the official docs for docs of Hugo, which if you check on the website you're coming from, it's not there. So they talked about official and there is no link for you to link. There is no link to this website. So installation, quite easy for you to install and create. So now let's go over to, okay, they call it shortcodes and not UI components, but UI components. So when you hear shortcodes, it might not mean UI component, might mean maybe you probably think of it as maybe like a command line or something. So the terms you use is also very important when it comes to documentation. All right, so we have callouts. So this is called callouts in some SSGs. Some call it asides, and some call it admonition. And I think it has two more names. So this is how it looks. This is the node callout. If you want to do a custom callout, more callout types, you have the caution and you have the danger. No, this is the detail. This is the code for you to do the details, and this is how it looks. It looks very nice. So this is the detail, open and close state. This is an open state of detail. So by default it's open, then you will close, and this one by default is closed, then you would open it. So it has a tab. Look at how the tab looks, very, very fine. So it has a link card, so you can add a card and link. It has a grid, card grid. It also has images. So you can also link a video, SVG, asset directory, also add icons. So deploying, you can deploy on Netlify Vessel, GitHub pages, and more. And it has search, you can add analytics, Google Analytics, and any other analytics of your choice. So this means this particular theme looks very, very cool. And if you use this theme, it's going to enhance your documentation. So we have a whole lot of them. You can also check out Astro. You can also check out Gatsby. So my advice would be go through the docs, go through different docs, check the one that fits your strength in terms of the languages they use. You check if it's customizable. Very, very important. You check if it has this, I'll call it the starter UI components that you would need before trying to create your own, like the tabs, and supports Markdown or supports ASCII doc, depending on the markup language you want to use. Then you can go ahead. So now let's use Docker tutorials as a sample. So now we have a sample project to work with. So this is DataScript. So it's a new type superset of JavaScript. So we are using this as a project. We're going to use Docker Source to create. So TypeScript is a modern statically typed subset of JavaScript, just like TypeScript, but with a simplified syntax and additional developer ergonomics for full stack development. So you can use TypeScript to create the front end. You can also use it to create your backend. So whether you're building a REST API, a front-end app, or a complete client-server application, that aims, to give developers a clean, consistent, and scalable coding experience. So it compiles to plain JavaScript, making it compatible with all significant JavaScript runtimes, frameworks, and libraries. So key features: static typing, universal compatibility, modern syntax, NPM support, REST API ready, built for devs. So when you have a new project to work on, a new tool like this, so this is how you get it. You can get it in this form, written like this, or sometimes you jump on a call with the engineer or the engineers or the product manager, depending on who is the SME in that organization. Then they would probably give you this information, either in a written form or they have it in a video format or on the call. They will just tell you, then you probably note it down. So this is a fresh new project, and this is how it always comes. So getting started, install TypeScript via npm, create a new project, compile locally or run watch mode for development, use REST API plus front-end example, test it locally, programming structure, because it's a programming language. Programming structure in TypeScript, you have the variables, this is how to create a variable. You have with typing friends, primitive types, functions, talk about the functions, talk about the classes, talk about the types and interfaces, talk about the modules and imports, decorators, APIs, and this is the recommendation or recommended project structure. So with this, now you want to create a documentation for this project. At this time, I think this is a lot for you to take. You'll be wondering, where would I start from? So the first step is having this information, which you have. Now, the next step is for you to go through this and ensure you understand it. Then, if you're okay that yes, I understand TypeScript enough, I can run it locally, I can test it, I can probably write very simple codes, like the variables, try to work with the variables and see how they work and all that, and create a very simple function. You now have a very good knowledge of it. You are now close to the SME. So the next thing is for you to now create a logical flow for this type of in your documentation where someone would come and they would understand, okay, this is the journey of how we started and this is where it's going to. I give you an example in the information architecture where you start from easy and move down to advanced. So ensure you have a logical flow. You're going to ask yourself a lot of questions. What would they need? Why would they need this? Why would they start with this? And why should they start from here? So first step is go over to your documentation tool. So you're using Docusaurus. So let's create a new project. So you can use any static site generator of your choice that works. Okay, so this is the name. It's not my. So data script. So you're going to select JavaScript or TypeScript, any one of your choice for documentation. All right, so we have it up and running. So here you just have to take note of this. So this is how to start your server locally, npm start if you want to build, npm run build if you want to serve locally, npm run serve if you want to deploy, publish to the GitHub pages, npm run deploy. Okay, so the first step is for us to cd into Tata script and npm start. So in Tata script, so we're going to run it locally, localhost 3000. So this is it. So now the next now comes with configuration. So one thing I would like you to note is all SSGs have a configuration file. Some call it configure file, some call it different names, but they will have a configuration file. Alright, so this is Tata script. Let's run it again. So first we need to have a document aside where we are going to write down the new structure. So you have a new document. Let's say this is your new document right now. You can call this new structure. We call this TypeScript structure. So the structure you want to flow is you have to ask yourself those questions. So first is a user would want to ask what this is all about. And something else for you to do is to also check other programming languages, documentation and websites people have done to kind of understand the structure of how they arrange their own and see if you probably learn a thing or two. So this is JavaScript. Let's get from Java. I think we're gonna use this kind of available structure. Maybe we try to use let's use Okay, let's try Python. Okay, so let's go to the docs. So here you see they have the beginner, they have the moderate, they have the advanced. So let's go over to the beginner side and see what they have here. Okay, so if you're new to Python, getting started, Python, learning Python, okay, provided list for you. If you need help, complete list of beginners, guide pages, quiz and exercises. So you're looking at this, you probably learn, even if the docs is not looking that good, but you probably have something to learn from the structure. So let's try to look from different. I think most communities will create a much better thing than the Python community. So let's see. Let's see W3 school. All right. So most times the organization don't create a very good doc structure. You probably have to learn elsewhere. So you see, they have intro, and if you go to intro, they're trying to introduce Python, what it can do, why Python, a few other stuff, and try it out. So try it out would help you know that this language is not hard, it's still on the easy phase. So you have the getting started, then you have the syntax. I need to tell you about the syntax. You have the comments, you have the variables, you have the data type, and it keeps going. You have file handling that is a bit more advanced. You have the modules, you have matplotlib, matplotlib. You have the machine learning that it keeps going down and down, and that is going down is more advanced. So let's check. Let's check tutorials point Java. Let's see. So here you have the review, you have the history, you have the features, you have Java versus C++, you have Java virtual machine, the environment setup, hello world, comment, basic syntax, variables, data types, typecasting. You have the operators, it's now getting advanced, control statements now getting advanced, OOP now getting advanced, built-in classes, file handling, error exceptions, is now getting advanced. So let's look at this Java from W3 school, intro, getting started. You have the syntax, you have the output, you have the comment, you have the variables, data type. This is method, this is classes, this is data structure, Java advanced, the regex exception. It keeps going down and it gets more advanced. So you have gone through and studied this other documentation that are doing something similar to you because you need to learn from what they have done and add from what they have done to try to improve your own documentation. So you see that I like this structure. So you can go through both of them and see what you can learn from there. So looking at this one, so looking at this, you would see, looking at the home, they make it easier for you to just go and try it out to see how easy JavaScript is. You have the introduction, you have the virtual, you have the output, the statement, you have the syntax, comment, variables, you have the let, const, operators, Now, this is not well structured, but you will need to go and learn from what they have done. Like I said, you're not trying to do everything, you're trying to learn from what they have done and trying to implement it in your own. So let's just pick out a few points to add to ours. So here, introduction is very important. So you need the getting started. Now, what is in getting started? So how to install, then the Java quick start, and that's it. So you have the intro, you have the getting, you have the getting started. So instead of getting started, you have how to set up and more. So the next thing you want to add in your own programming language, because your own programming language has something similar to what they have. So you have syntax, so they will know the syntax of the language that will help them know how to write very well. Then you have low word. So they now know the syntax. Now try to write something very simple. Try to tell them that this is easier for them to work with. So you have the comments, you have the variables, you have the data types. Then let's say you have the operators. So let's work with this structure and try to improve our custodial documentation. So this is our custodial documentation. It has a config file. Now this config file is where you would go and make changes to your documentation and make it look exactly how you want it. So this is our documentation right now. So we're having my site, and that's not the name. So our site, this is where you make the changes. So you click on dockerservers or config.js. They all have their own config file. So in their documentation, they will always point you to where their config file is. Let's check. Let's check Mintify. The Mintify has their own config file. Okay, so let's go from the beginning to getting started. So in this getting started, they should mention somewhere. So adding content, customizing your brand. So easily customize colors, logos, buttons, among other configurations in our docs.json file. So I have the Mintify project open locally here, and this is the docs.js. Now this is their config file. So you click on it, you come here, you make changes, and it will come up to the way you want. So this is where you make changes. So it's going to have your brand color, branding style will be done here. If you want to customize it further, you also do that from here and also do that from other areas. But this is where you come make changes to the colors, make changes to the look and the feel of your docs. If you want to add more navbar, this is where you come to do it. If you want to change the logo, you see that you're able to change the logo from here. If you want to change the background color, you can do that. If you want to change the links, the navbar links, the footer, this is where you do it. So all SSGs have a configuration file. So ensure you read the docs. It's very important. A lot of people don't read docs, they just jump off to start doing things. So ensure you read the docs. So here we have my site, and since it's our site anyways, but this is for Tata script. So you save. So we have Tata script. So the tagline can be anything. So this is the best. So this is the best programming language. So going further, you can decide to make more modifications. Now, if you want to modify this section, like I said, ensure you read the docs, so that would help you, know how to customize the pages more and more. So this is the section of your docs in the home page, and you want to change this. So you go under source component and the home page features. Click on index.js. Like I said earlier on, ensure you pick a docs that first uses a language or a framework that you're familiar with. This is React. So if you don't know React, you're a Golang person or a Ruby or Rust engineer, it's going to be difficult for you to try to maintain this when it comes to doing some sophisticated customization, except your team has a dedicated engineer to work on this. So if they don't have, and you're the one managing it as a technical manager, it's advisable for you to look for the one that has a language or a framework that you can work with. There are other features, but this should be the first thing you should check out for before you check out if it has some components, if it's scalable, if it has some other features or not. So this is easy to use. So you can, let's say, want to change this to be how to install. So it has changed. So this is how you make customizations to that. So let's click tutorial. So tutorial is supposed to be the docs. So let's change the name tutorial. So we're going over to the Docker source config file, and we are searching for, again, so I think the file we still have here, we only made changes in the homepage, but the name here is still my site. So let's change it from there. So there's a config file. Now this is the navbar title, which is in my site. So let's change this. So it has changed to Tata script. The nav tutorial and the blog, and also want to make changes in it, you would go over to the configuration file. If you read the documentation, you would see that. So under the items, you would see your tutorial, and you change it to docs if you want to, and you can also change this to maybe vlog if you want to. So let's check. We have this, and we can come here under disclose this. So when you go over to your docs, the first MD file you see that as your intro, so you can change this to introduction, which is what we have here. Then if you go to our docs, to our structure, we have getting started. Now to change the getting started, we go over to here. You can create your own new folder, or you edit the one we have here. So we have getting started. Now this is just to change this folder name, so you're able to know the folder name. So looking at this, you still have the tutorial basics, but to change this is here. So you come over here. Now this is very important because this is what the SEO will use. This is what the SEO will use. And ensure you add a very good description. So this is the front matter. So ensure you add a very good description, so the SEO will be able to crawl and get information about this page. So you have the getting started, then you add everything you want to add on that the getting started. Then you have your tutorials. So the next we have syntax. Rename this to syntax. Ensure the configure file is syntax. So you also add the description. You don't have a description, to any description for this. All right. So if you want to add more, So the next we have, okay, so we have the hello world. So I have to get it started this and let's add the hello world. So hello world, let's just call it an MD file. Let's name it an MD file. So so we have hello world at the top. Yeah, so this is the name. Now position 1, so we need to make it at position 4. We change to position 4. So you also add a description to this. All right, so we have comments. And here is in MD. You have in variables. MD. And then data type. It's MD. I have in operators. Oops. Just MD. Okay, so we have comments. So comment is 5. We have variables. Position 7, and we have operators. Right, so let's go view. So you have your introduction, you have the getting started, you have your syntax, you have your hello world, you have your comments, variables, data type, and operators. So in the intro, you start writing more about the introductory part of this programming language, giving them a few information they need to know, getting started, how to set up, how to install, and more. The syntax, tell them about the syntax of the language, the hello world. I've known the syntax right now. Let's write a very simple line of code, one line of code to show you that this language is very easy. And you have the comment, tell them how the comment works, the variable, the data types, and operators. So this is what you will discuss with the engineer, the SME. They will give you more information about the project, then you record it down, write it down, refine it, make it easy to understand, then you put it on the documentation. And in those processes, you're also testing because you're writing from what you're understanding and not just from what you consume from the engineer or consume from the content you got online. So if you follow this whole process, you build a world-class documentation.